It's week 18 in the NFL, the final games of the regular season. The Browns play a meaningless game versus the Bengals. The playoff opponent is on the line. Fantasy football moments of shame. Big show coming up right now on the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara, the sickest Cleveland Browns podcast.
Chubb runs, he's to the 10, 15, he's to the 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. There goes Chubb, he's to the 30, 20, 10, 5, touchdown, Shabba-lubba hub.
It's gonna be sick.
Hey, everybody. Well, we made it. Last game of the NFL season for the Browns for week 18. There's still some playoff impact today, right? There's a lot of meaningless games. Probably the toughest games to bet on the last week of the NFL season. But we'll get to some of our best bets there. And really for the Browns, this is a game where you want to get out healthy, right? And for most Browns fans, we're going to be watching Jags versus Titans, because last night it was the Texans taking out the Colts. Boy, CJ Stroud looks good. Look, as a Browns fan, I'm not scared of any opponent. I think this team has overcome so much. But if I had a preference, I'd rather not play CJ Stroud and the Texans. That team looks like they're cooking. All right? Jags versus Titans. Jaguars win. They're the AFC South champs, and that's who the Browns play. They lose, it's the Texans who pop up, and they become division champs. We'll bring on my buddy Sho Ali in a few minutes, talk about our fantasy football moments of shame. I want to hear yours too from over this past NFL season. This is something I've done for several years now. Just looking back and like, man, what was that worst decision? What was that? Was it at the draft? Was it mid-season? Somebody you dropped, didn't pick up, spent too much for, whatever. Give me your fantasy football moments of shame. You can leave that live in the comment section here on YouTube or on Twitter at SickPodBrowns. You can watch live along there at AndyMC81, Instagram too at AndyMCSports. And let's look at this Browns-Bengals game, okay? Bengals also, of course, as you know, nothing to play for, 8-8. Just playing for pride, really. For the Browns, it's a case where, now, how important this is to the team itself, I don't know. They seem to have the mentality that they want to play strong. They are buying into what the coach says. They want to go in on an uplifting note to the postseason as much as possible. When we look at this overall series, the Bengals have said, Zach Taylor, their head coach, said early in the week, we want to win any means necessary. They want to feel good and not drop to under 500 and not go 0-6. Bengals have beat nobody in this division all year. It would be the first time they go 0-6 in division since 2002. And for the Browns, with a win, it'd be the first time that they went 4-2 in the AFC North since that division was founded in 2002. All-time series, Bengals lead at 52-48, so the Browns can pop up one closer to making that even. Last meeting, of course, was opening day. Here we are, full circle. How crazy. Opening day was against the Bengals, and of course, the Browns absolutely smashed them 24-3. And who would have thought, going all the way back then, that when we were in January, in week 18, it wouldn't be Deshaun Watson, it wouldn't be DTR, it would be Joe Flacco. It would be Joe by God Flacco. I still can't believe it. He's taking a seat today. Jeff Driscoll is in. Jeff Driscoll, 30 years old, played for the Bengals, actually played against the Browns once in 2018, lost, but had like 128 QB rating or something. So played decent. He's your classic journeyman, right? 14 touchdowns, 8 interceptions on his career, 1-9 win streak. This is his 7th team or something. And big guy, 6'4", about 215. Now, the reason that he was brought in is, of course, a lot of reasons in the NFL, familiarity. Alex Van Pelt, the Browns offensive coordinator now, was with the Bengals in 2018 when Driscoll was on that team. Driscoll was on the practice squad just now with Arizona. That's where the Browns plucked him from. They got him from there, where Drew Petzig, who was on the Browns coaching staff last year, was. So similar type of offense, OC for the Cardinals. And so you have all those connections, Driscoll in. It's really an audition, I think. It's an audition to see going into the playoffs. Is it Driscoll who gives you the better backup option, or is it P.J. Walker, who you know what you have? So that's going to be a big game for him. Lots of players sitting. Garrett's going to be sitting, all that type of thing. I want to hear from you though on social media, either in the chat here or on Twitter at SickPodBrowns at AndyMC81. Number one, who do you want the Browns to play? You have your choice. I know we're not scared of anybody, but if you had your choice, do you want the Jaguars or do you want the Texans? Do you want to go to Jacksonville or do you want to go to Houston? Where do you want to go? So you can reply to that tweet at AndyMC81 at SickPodBrowns. And also send me in your fantasy football moment of shame. The thing that fell apart for you in your fantasy football season. And we'll get to some NFL best bets as well. But really out of this game for the Browns, you want to get out healthy. That's really the main thing. Anthony Walker put on IR. Another guy fell. They're used to it. But also, guys, for your fantasy football season, let's pull this up. So this is my professional fantasy football player shirt. You got that in the flesh, but there it is. That's the team shop. Now, if you go to my Twitter at AndyMC81 or in the show link here, if you go below, you'll have a click to get your fantasy football gear. Your fantasy football champion like me and Joe's going to be popping on. You champ, get yourself a shirt. Look how good that looks. Fantasy champion shirt or professional fantasy football player shirt. Both really nice material, soft. It's really nice. Fits the shoulders good. Gets you popping, right? Feeling good. And so you can get that as well. We got lots of fun Browns gear too. Browns themed shirts, Ohio State a little bit as well. So you can pop into the show there. Also, a Trophy Smack in that tweet. If you want to get something from Trophy Smack, like one of these great rings, I got here one of these great championship rings. Got another one on the way for my ESPN league. You can get that, or chains or belts in the link at that tweet. Also gives you a little discount there, so you can pop on. All right, we'll talk a bit more Browns. We'll get fantasy football, some NFL Week 18 bets. Let's bring on my guy from Sportsnet, Sho Ali. He's back. Sho, how are you, buddy?
Good, Andy. How's it going, man?
Going good, man. We are both fantasy champions. You in our Sportsnet league. You downed me and then went on to glory. So if you have to lose to someone, lose to the champ, right?
Exactly. It makes you feel better about it.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm in 5. I was in 5 leagues this year, and I made the playoffs in 4 of them. And in the one I lost in the semis, I lost to the guy who eventually won. So it does make you feel a little better, I gotta say.
A little better, yeah. And I think for fantasy, the main thing is if you make the playoffs, because it's such a long season, that's the first goal, right? Especially if you win the league or close to it. That's the goal. For me, I was in 4 leagues. I made the playoffs in all 4, finished 3rd in 2, won the ESPN league. And it's funny, though. The one I lost in the first round to is the one I was most proud of, because I cobbled together, I was ravaged with injuries. I had to cobble together to make the playoffs. A Ty Chandler, I had Chandler, Browning, Zamir White, just a terrible. I'm like, oh my, and I made it, and it was just waiver wire magic, and that's all part of it.
I do think the biggest part of the fantasy playoffs, like you're saying, is that making the playoffs is the hardest part.
Yeah.
But once you're in the playoffs, it's a complete crapshoot. You know what I mean? You are at the mercy of so many different things that you have. I mean, you never have any control over them, but especially in the playoffs, like you mentioned, Zamir White in one of my other leagues that I won in 2 leagues this year, and it's pure luck. I had Raheem Mostert and Jalen Waddle, who were great all year. And then, well, at least Raheem Mostert was. And then in the final week of the year, he gets injured and then doesn't suit up. So in the fantasy championship, I suited up Zamir White for the first time literally all year. And I won by 4 points.
There
right.
You go.
So it's you can't control those things. Right.
No, you have to be savvy with it. Right. That's why you listen to the show here and you get those nuggets of who to pick up. And it's that combo of your stashing. You'll stash some guys that you think and they do nothing. And then you get Zamir, okay, anyone thinks Zamir White could have been a fantasy winner? What about Sho? Imagine where someone just randomly picked up Puka Nacua. It's
sure.
The name, it's a funny, I like the name. You pick him up and the guy's, no one could have saw that coming. But that's what happens.
I remember when I came on this show with you, week 2 or 3 or something, and one of the guys I talked about picking up was Rashee Rice. And it's funny, Rice was on one of my championship winning teams. And it's funny because it still feels like the Chiefs struggled to give a lot of trust to anyone not named Travis Kelce, who, by the way, might factor into my fantasy moments of shame a little bit later on. Okay. But it's true. I'm looking forward to seeing what Rice becomes in year 2, because this is a guy, I mean, today is week 18, but if you look over the first 16 games of the season for most teams, Rashee Rice still almost had 1,000 yards receiving in 16 games. So I think very impressive for a lot of rookies this year.
Yep, and he has a hammy issue. If you're playing DFS today, just as a heads up there. But for Rice, it's a case show where like it was okay. Who's going to complement? Who's going to be that Tyreek Hill replacement? And he's not a Tyreek Hill replacement,
no,
yet. But he started to pick up. He went on a 3-week double-digit stretch, low 5 to 7. And then single digit. But then from week 12 all the way to last week, really stood out. And at least it gives, I think, the Chiefs some hope that maybe they have somebody to build off of. Because I don't know about you, Sho, but Travis Kelce, still, look, he didn't finish at the top tight end. In PPR this year was Sam Laporta. That's what the first time in how long that Travis Kelce was not the guy. And I think is it fair to say, are we just a tip of the mountain? He's just starting to go down the other way.
I think we're halfway down the mountain, not even
he's sliding.
Yeah,
he's holding on. He's
on his way down.
No,
it's true. I mean, Travis Kelce made the news this year way more because of dating Taylor Swift than for any really great football plays. And I'm not blaming Taylor Swift. It's just I think he's probably closer to retirement than he is to being the peak tight end. And I mean, you mentioned Sam Laporta. I mean, Trey McBride was very good this year.
Yeah.
Mark Andrews, until he went down, was basically on pace to be the best tight end as well. David Njoku was very, very good, as you all know. Evan Ingram continued to be very good. So for the first time in a long time, you and I talk about this every year. For the first time in a long time, the tight end landscape was not a complete wasteland, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. And we got in the show chat there on YouTube. You can jump in there. T-Wolf in the house. Rick's in there. Thunderwolf. How's it going, buddy? Happy New Year. Yes. Let me know, Rick, your fantasy football or betting moment of shame for 2023, the 2023 season. Any Browns notes as well, you can pop in there. Click subscribe, notifications on to the show. And Sho, let's look a little bit more at that tight end fantasy group, because you're right. It was at least different. So we had it depends on your points and all that, but PPR, Sam Laporta, 225.4. This is in Yahoo leagues. Fantasy points. Travis Kelce, 219.4. Both averaged in the 14 plus 14 point whatever points. TJ Hawkinson finished with 0.4. Show 0.4 fewer fantasy points, so pretty much a tie for second with Travis Kelce, and then you had Evan Ingram after that, and then really when you start
injury, He got injured too. Yeah,
isn't that crazy? Good. You know what? Good point with the injury. Still, so if he would have played, Hawkinson would have been number 2,
probably. Yeah,
right. And remember that's with Kirk Cousins going down. That's with a real hodgepodge with Minnesota. So
the Vikings started. Cousins, I mean, he was great with Cousins before Cousins went down, but he played with Cousins, Dobbs, Hall, and Mullins. That's crazy. And
then got injured. I think Evan Ingram to me was probably the biggest surprise, because he was with the Giants, and he kind of he was fine last year, but he kind of always just been mid, right? Just he was fine, and not like he was necessarily blowing the doors off things all the time, but for fantasy purposes, he had 3. This is what gets you a top 4 show. 3 touchdowns. That's it. 884 yards, but the volume and catches went up, especially over a couple weeks. Week 14, he had 11 catches. Week 16, he had 10. So you have a lot from number 4 down. Everybody was averaging single-digit fantasy points per game. Again.
You know, it's funny. I really do think Evan Ingram this year, because he had a pretty good year last year, but my question was it sustainable? And this year it wasn't quite as sustainable, mainly because Trevor Lawrence, I think, did take a bit of a step back. But I really do think that Evan Ingram, if you had him as your tight end, he was rarely the reason you lost a week. You know what I mean? He was was almost like the model of consistency when it came to fantasy points. Even if you did only get 7 to 8 points out of him, if you're getting 7 to 8 points out of your tight end in any week, I think that's amazing, frankly.
If you didn't get one of those top 3, right? Like I'm looking, he had what we consider bad weeks. Let's say under 9 is a bad week.
All right.
Okay, for argument's sake. So week 5, 6.8. Week 10 and 11, 5.2 and 6.9. Week 15, 6.8. The rest of the time, 9 or higher with some really big pops. So that, to your point, for consistency, Evan Ingram, and for where, again, you probably drafted, it all comes down to that draft value. For you get that type of consistency out of a guy, you could have got late rounds, I'd say.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's
where do you
bad.
take Trey McBride next year, Andy? Because Trey McBride, because we've now heard in the last couple of days that Jonathan Gannon and the rest of the Cardinal staff have said, like, unequivocally, Kyler Murray is their guy. They're not drafting a new quarterback. They're going to build around Kyler Murray. And I got to give Kyler Murray some credit. The guy came back from injury. I thought he played pretty well for like pretty much the entire season, right? So I was very impressed by Kyler Murray all year long. But, and I mean, boy, that game against the Eagles last week, what a game. Terrific performance from Murray and James Conner, who I know you had in our league. He was just nasty. He was great. So I think that is the right move to build around Kyler Murray. So if Kyler Murray is the quarterback next year, the same offensive staff is in place, and you have Trey McBride. Trey McBride, I mean, he was a monster since and Zach Ertz went down and then he was eventually released. So there wasn't a lot of competition for Trey McBride when it came to like targets and touches and so on. And I guess we'll have to see if there's another big time wideout signed or whatever, because if it's like Greg Dortch and like on a Rondale Moore competing for targets, it's probably not going to be like, it's not going to change your opinion. But if someone major comes in, that might change the equation. But Trey McBride was he might have been one of the, like, you know, people exaggerate about like league winners right at the end of years. He might have legitimately been a league winner based on his production very late in the season. Probably
picked up off of waivers.
Right.
Or an afterthought in the draft. Yeah. If you look, once Ertz went down, so from week 6 onwards, he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or more fantasy weeks, and he had like 3 or 4 in the 20s. That's good. And what stands out more too is, like we always talk to, like, don't look at just the overall total, because who was it? Who was the guy who always got injured? I think it was with the Texans. Will Fuller. And he had like, it's like, oh my God, Will Fuller. And he had like 3 games where he got 200 yards and then like 0 the rest of the way. But the average out, looked good, right?
It's true.
Oh my God, Will Fuller. How frustrating is that guy? But you look at McBride, the targets were consistent. You were getting 7 to 9 targets a game, 10, 11. So that type of volume is right there. And Njoku really started to come alive when, as crazy as it sounds, when Joe Flacco came to town.
Pretty crazy.
David Njoku has absolutely, I was going to say caught on fire, but he literally did catch himself on fire. Oh my God. And you know what he said? He said, when I caught on fire, I started like appreciating life. He took, I
saw that.
No, it was like a moment from God. It was like it burned you. I was like, oh man, it like was a light on. And he's been absolutely unstoppable. Like he's looking like Travis Kelce.
My question is legitimately about the Browns offense next year. I have like no idea what it's going to look like from a fantasy perspective outside of Nick Chubb, because obviously Nick Chubb going to be back. Probably one of the best running backs in the NFL. He's going to play. And his injury was long enough ago that by the time next season starts, he'll probably be like fine. Yeah. But beyond Nick Chubb, I actually have no idea how to forecast literally any of Amari Cooper, David Njoku, Elijah Moore. Like if Jerome Ford's going to be involved, just because like they started so many different quarterbacks who all do so many different things that I have like no idea who's going to prefer. I mean, like in theory, you're always going to try and throw to Amari Cooper. You're always going to like run the ball with Chubb, and Jerome Ford looks a pretty capable backup, but gosh, I mean, like you can't, how do you know? You can't possibly know. It's kind of nuts, honestly.
No, you're 100% right, Joe, because you'd have to think Joe Flacco's not going to be back. If Joe Flacco keeps on how he's been performing, he's going to be given a chance to start for another team. Like he's playing, and the Browns have too much invested. You're not going to go away from Deshaun Watson. You're just not. Like, heck, I'd rather, why not? But Deshaun Watson is like 28 years old. Joe Flacco's going to be 39 years old. longevity and investment, you're going to go with Watt. But this offense has never looked better than under Flacco. So fantasy-wise, you're right. It is totally unpredictable. I think you go Njoku again just because of the tight end scenario, right? And just kind of see how that goes to get him. But outside of that, like Kareem Hunt's probably going to be gone again. No, Chubb comes back. Like it's what about like Cedric Tillman would be a really nice add in dynasty and keeper leagues. I definitely want some shares of him because he's going to be. The plan is for him to eventually be that number one over Cooper potentially if he develops. So Tillman is somebody I want some shares of too.
Thank you for telling me that. We're starting our dynasty league up. I'm going to try and get Cedric Tillman on my team.
Damn it. That's right. Oh, no. I forgot. Oh, no. Yeah. Let's look at a couple other positions. Was there a position, show, or player that kind of popped out to you as like a real surprise? Like, I'm going to pull up quarterbacks here. You can go anywhere you like, good or bad.
I do think wide receiver this year was unusually deep. You know what I mean? Like I feel like if you had gone like early in drafts, whether it's an auction draft or redraft or whatever, but if you had early in drafts gone for your stud running back and decided to fill around that guy, and there are not very many stud running backs, I should say, but you filled around like a CMC and you managed to fill, and even if you passed on Tyreek Hill or you couldn't get Hill or CeeDee Lamb or Amon-Ra St. Brown, all of whom are probably going to be first-round picks next year because they were all ridiculous in how much production they gave you. But even if you waited, right? I mean, you could have gotten. We talked about Rashee Rice; he was available off waivers. Christian Watson disappointed, but Jaden Reed ended up being one of the best pickups in the late part of the season maybe for any team. You got, Jahan Dotson was pretty awful, and then he was tabbed for a big breakout when Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry, ended up being pretty reliable.
Yeah, he was.
Anyways, right? It just, I feel like it was a lot. Puka Nacua, obviously, like who you brought up earlier. It just, there are a lot of guys who you could have gotten to fill out your team late who probably had WR1 production for most of the season, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was weird. It was a very weird situation in Green Bay because I feel you could have made an argument for a Reed, a Dubs, a one of the other guy you mentioned, but there's four guys where you're okay, well maybe he could be the number one, and then the ball distribution was they kind of all worked, right? It was very strange in Green Bay. I think one thing, and hi to Grant popping in the chat there too on YouTube, you can jump in, and he's going back to Njoku. He said he even caught fire with DTR. Yeah, that's true.
That is true.
And all those different types of quarterbacks. We'll see who the Browns get back going into the playoffs. Grant Delpit and Okoronkwo are possibilities. But we look at 1, 2, and you mentioned the Packers wide receivers. Jordan Love was a huge question mark heading into this year. It was, okay, what is this guy going to be like? And he finished 1, 2, 3, 4, QB5 in fantasy leagues, which is pretty remarkable considering first month of the season, red hot, right? Boom. Fantasy. I was like, oh man. Then he went into a skid of about, 3-4 weeks, about a month, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, about 4 games. Then he popped right back up. Then went in week 14, had a dud and finished really strong. So he overcame. I don't think he's the, second coming of Aaron Rodgers or Brett Favre, but I think he's good enough to build around.
Sure. Yeah, sure. I think too, from a fantasy perspective as well, he started the year, his fantasy scores were kind of, I don't know if you remember this, they were kind of buoyed by a lot of rushing output. He was rushing because early in the season, Aaron Jones got injured, and it was a hamstring injury that basically lingered all season for him. But so in the absence of Aaron Jones, Jordan Love was running a lot. I think there were a couple games, maybe it might have been the first 3 straight games. He had a rushing touchdown or at least had a decent amount of rushing yardage. And then after a while, that kind of dried up, right? So you were talking about there was a bit of a drought in terms of fantasy points. And I think that's when he was still throwing the ball a fair amount. Christian Watson was injured. Aaron Jones was injured. He himself was not running the ball a lot. And then after he had enough time with this very young wide receiver group, I think it was something every one of the receivers in his receiving room was at oldest in their second year in the NFL, which is kind of nuts, honestly. And he himself is going into his first year as a starter, even if he was drafted a couple of years ago. So they're all kind of in the same boat. And then Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks,
That was the
Dobbs,
guy.
and then obviously on top of that, Christian Watson, some of these other guys, but even the tight ends, right? We were talking about tight ends earlier. Luke Musgrave was flashed a little bit. He got concussed, was out. Tucker Kraft ended up coming in, more of a blocking guy, but still caught a fair amount of passes. So the Packers offense ended up being relatively productive, and Jaden Reed, Andy, from like week 14 all the way through to the fantasy championship in week 17 it was averaging like 17 points a game. It's kind of nuts how many touchdowns this guy caught.
Well, and the Packers still have a chance to make the playoffs today. And the Vikings. Good Lord. That NFC is a mess. Oh, man. Good Lord. We got a fantasy question in. You can get hashtag Ask Andy. I wasn't expecting any, but hey, you got fantasy questions? Pop them in. We got on the YouTube chat from Colton Elio. For this week, which two out of Gibbs, Jones, or Zeke? Now, of course, Sho, the question here is week 18, Lions have clinched. How much playing time, if any, do we expect Gibbs to get? You answered this, if this was 2 weeks ago, you answered this question a whole lot different than if it was now. So I'm just going to look up to see if there's any Jahmyr Gibbs news. Is he going to play?
So it was Gibbs, Zeke, and who?
2 out of Gibbs,
Jones,
Aaron Jones, or Zeke.
Okay.
It looks like I don't think they play Gibbs a full workload. Do you? I don't think so.
Do the Lions really have anything to play for? I don't think so.
No, because
maybe beyond seeding, or are they even locked into their seed? Because they've won the division already.
Yeah, right? So they're 11-5. Dallas and Eagles are San Francisco's already locked up the top seed and the bye. Right. So you're not playing for that. So I guess seeding, but I don't know. That doesn't.
I did see that Zeke has a fair amount of incentives still due to him. Ooh. So I wonder if Zeke might not be the right play because, I don't know, is he going to be in New England next year? There's going to be probably a whole new coaching staff in New England next year. So maybe they just let these guys get to their incentives. The other half of it, honestly, with the Patriots is that this is probably Bill Belichick's last game in New England. I assume he wants to stick it to the Jets on his way out.
One more time.
Just one more time. He's done it his entire career.
Has to.
I gotta think that. So I'm gonna go with Zeke. And the Packers have to win today if they want to make the playoffs. So I'm going to go with Aaron Jones.
I'm going to go the exact same way you are. I was looking. Aaron Jones the last couple of weeks has gotten into those mid-teens, double digits in PPR, and is expected to take on even a larger workload today. I think that's the safest bet. Now, could Gibbs go off? Yes, but it just feels to me, Sho, maybe like a first half. Would it surprise you if he sits in the second half?
Right.
How much do you want to risk your stars? That's where I'm a bit concerned there. So we'll say Zeke and Jones for you there, content. And we got Tashi saying, Andy, good job as always. Love you, Tashi. Good stuff. Hope you're well. And make sure you guys click the notification, subscribe, all that good stuff in there. Some fantasy questions in there. And I guess, Sho, I think there's a chance to make some money today in DFS. Because this is for betting and for daily fantasy, like your DraftKings, it is the weirdest week. You could win maybe by playing Jeff Driscoll of the Browns today.
Right.
Right.
Probably not. Probably not.
Probably not Driscoll. But you might. It's all these weird type of backups. And you mentioned the Patriots. I want to see the odds here. Let's see what the line is. I'm smashing the Patriots all day. Sho at home, and you're right. Everybody, it's kind of the wink. Everybody knows this is it for Belichick. However, he gets let go. How do you think it happens? Kraft doesn't fire him, does he? It's a parting of the ways.
Exactly. When the notification comes down tomorrow morning, I think it will not be they have fired Bill Belichick. It will be they have decided to part ways
mutually.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's exactly what it's going to be. You see those rumors that Belichick, when he rehired Bill O'Brien from the college ranks last offseason, that he didn't allow Bill O'Brien to hire his own offensive staff. He basically blocked B.O.B. from his own staff. He allowed him to hire one assistant, but then made him and this one assistant basically coexist with the current staff because in his mind, for Bill Belichick, he wanted to keep Matt Patricia and Joe Judge in offensive roles or whatever. And then Kraft had to like step in, and I don't know, it was a whole mess. So there was a crazy hierarchy of like coaching assistants and who's reporting to who and who's doing what. It's like, boy, if that's true, and Bill just like wanted to keep Matt Patricia, like he's got to go for that alone.
Yeah, it's like Matt, like I know you got your boys, you try to help out your boys, right? But come on, right? Like the Belichick tree, the recycling of people. And remember, the start of the year, wasn't there like no offensive coordinator? Like it was like a mission, like a conglomerate of guys. Like this is essentially show this is why you're 4-12 if you're doing.
Yeah, oof. My worst fear really is that the Patriots do beat the Jets today, because they're gonna essentially go from picking like in the top 3 with a loss today to like in the top 6, which I mean, like I don't know, top 6 pick. You're still gonna take that, but for a franchise that like desperately needs a franchise quarterback, I mean, you're gonna basically ruin your chances of getting any of like Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, or even if you pass on those guys, Marvin Harrison Jr., right? So I don't know. I mean, at the same time, it always is fun to see the Patriots stick it to the Jets. So I guess I can't complain too much.
Well, that seems like a very Belichickian thing to do on the way out. Just like, I'll get that win. It'll have consequence. Like, we know it's not the quarterbacks here. Mac Jones, bust, horrendous bust.
Awful. Just
Bailey Zappi, okay. Like, it's just terrible. You need another. And I think, you really need not Bill Belichick making the quarterback pick. I think that's the main thing. Like the Patriots are going to have to go, I think, the polar opposite. I think we're going to see young, fresh, offensive guy having a little fun. Maybe he smiles. I don't know.
I could see. You know what I could see? I could see Tennessee after a disappointing season firing Mike Vrabel, and then Vrabel coming home to New England for his guy Robert Kraft. You know what I mean? I could see that happening.
That could not a whole lot of smiles out of Vrabel, but
no,
you could see that, right? Interesting. I would say New England 2.5-point favorite. Oh, the under is set at 28.5. Bleh. 28.5.
I will say this perhaps does help the Zeke pick out as well. Apparently, it's supposed to be like a giant snowstorm in New England today, like a massive snow game all over the place, like all over the entire area. So, like I think in our experience, that tends to lean more towards running backs, anyways, right? So maybe that helps.
Oh, that's gross. Look at McCorkle Jones' stat show. I just get 10 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Get out of here. Go away.
Bailey Zappi, I think, has proven enough to be like the backup next year. You know what I mean? I think that's fine. I think he's fine. What a stinker quarterback class. Let's say, because you had Zach Wilson and Mac Jones, same QB class, right? Yes.
Who else was in that class? Like,
was that the Trevor Lawrence class as well? It was, right? Trevor Lawrence was 1. He was the first overall pick in that class, and then it was like Zach Wilson 2, Trey Lance. And then Mac Jones as well. You know what's pretty funny? I actually think there's a really good chance, Andy, that Trevor Lawrence ends up being a bust anyways, but still is the best quarterback from that draft class, which is kind of crazy. I think if he retired right now, Trevor Lawrence, he'd still be the best quarterback. Yeah. That is just it is so bad. It is so bad. Oh, what do we got? Patriots start Nathan Rourke today. Rick is asking. That's cool. Hey, little CFL. Wait, is it a question or that's actually happening? So question. Is it a question? Okay. Question? Why not? Throw the Rourkster out there. They should. Yeah, they should. Have you seen Nathan Rourke play when he was playing for the Lions, Andy? He is ridiculous. Like he's small though, right? I think he's a bit of a shorter guy, and this is true. But I mean, gosh, he's mobile. He can throw on the run. I just get him in there at some point just to see what the guy's got. I mean, you can't tell me in the year of the backup quarterback that we got this year in the NFL, you're telling me that Nathan Rourke isn't better than some of these guys we've seen? He absolutely is. Come on. Worth a shot. Show in a year where Joe Flacco has in 5 games more touchdowns than Kenny Pickett has had in his whole career. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. Yeah. That would be fun. But again, like that seems like something interesting, and I could see Belichick being like, "No." It's like, "Oh, of course you won't do it, Bill." Yeah, you grouch. And then the hunt will be like, where does he go? I would think Ron Rivera probably gets fired. Could be Washington. I think Washington's a headliner to me. Chargers with Justin Herbert. Sure. Raiders. Maybe that's where Harbaugh goes back to. What if the Bills miss the playoffs because they lose tonight to the Dolphins? I don't think that's going to happen. But in theory, what if he loses, the Bills fire Sean McDermott, and they bring in Bill Belichick?
Oh!
Buffalo Bills.
What a twist! Then he would have. Well, he didn't technically, I guess, coach for the Jets, but he was hired by the Jets.
Yeah, he was like there.
Screw them, then hose them. That is like a pro wrestling twist. That's like a pull off the mask. It's like, oh, he was the devil all along. It was me. It was Belichick. I kind of want that to happen now, Sho.
I know. Honestly, it sounds like being a bit of a sicko, but I think I kind of do too. Honestly, like I think what would Bills fan, they'd be so conflicted about like cheering for the guy who like ruined their lives for the last like 20 years.
Yes, destroyed the. Oh my gosh, that would be nuts. That would be just totally off the. And you know what? In a year like this, who knows?
I think you're right, though. I've seen reports that like there are teams in like the NFC South that have interest in him, and it's like apart from Todd Bowles, pretty much every head coach in the NFC South is probably getting fired tomorrow. So I gotta think that we think it's going to be something sexy like the Commanders and a new situation, but it's probably going to end up being like Bill Belichick coaches Bryce Young and the Panthers next year, which is kind of I don't know if I want to see that.
Oh yeah, that NFC South sucks, but that division's on the line. AFC South is on the line for Browns fans. And we're going to do our fantasy football moment of shame in a few minutes here. The Browns now, with the Texans win over the Colts last night, will play either the Jaguars. If the Jags beat the Titans, they win the division. Browns play them in Jacksonville. Or if they lose, it will be the Browns versus the Texans in Houston. From a non-Browns fan perspective, what do you think is the better matchup?
Oh, I'm definitely more interested in seeing Joe Flacco and Myles Garrett and these guys go up against CJ Stroud. Like I'm far from like a neutral perspective.
Yeah,
I'm more interested in that. But I think as a better matchup for the Browns, you want to see them play the busted up Jaguars. No, like you want to see them play like the broken down Trevor Lawrence in the playoffs. Even if I guess either way it would mean the Browns have to go on the road because they're not winning the division thanks to the Ravens. Yeah. But either way, I think the Browns have such a good defense. I think you'll be all right either way. But I did see that Kevin Stefanski, who is, I guess, favored to win Coach of the Year, which is pretty cool. But Kevin Stefanski is like undefeated against the AFC South, like in his career as a head coach. So that's pretty impressive. It's got to make you feel pretty good.
12-0, swept them this year. I was at the Titans game in week 3 when they won. And then, they beat all of them. Now, the difference is, and why I'm totally with you on the wanting matchup-wise to play the banged-up Jaguars, is because they played banged-up Trevor Lawrence and the Jags and beat them pretty. It was closer than it was, as every Browns game is, but, you weren't really that concerned for the most part.
Right.
They beat the Texans, but that was without C.J. Stroud, and they just pummeled Case Keenum.
Oh, that's right.
So that matchup hasn't – Will Anderson wasn't in there either. So that –
And Andy – CJ Stroud, he's a bad dude. He's a bad
awesome.
dude.
He's awesome. He's so good. Like, it show how many times did we have a conversation on this show, whatever, of like CJ Stroud? I was flabbergasted when Bryce Young was being talked about over CJ Stroud on whatever show I was doing or talking to whoever I was talking. I'm like, are you nuts? This guy, like Sammy and the crew here at Sick Media were at the combine and they saw Bryce Young in person. And they're like, Andy, that guy is not 5'10". He is not 5'10". He is like 5'8", perhaps. Like, I'm sorry, nice guy. I wish him well, but 5'8". Or you could take 6'3", 215 CJ Stroud that played in a pressure-packed from day one Ohio State and played at the highest level. Like, I can make the argument. CJ Stroud has played his college career at higher stakes and more just either maybe not competitiveness, but just pressure than he has with Houston. Like your main event every week with Ohio State, every week, and you got to win. In Houston, there was like zero expectation. That guy's balled out. It's insane.
Yeah, he's been so good. I will say I don't necessarily blame the Panthers. Or let me rephrase. I don't necessarily blame Bryce Young for what's going on with the Panthers, mainly because that whole situation seems to have been like chronically mismanaged. And he's the owner, the coaching staff, the front office, the guys who he's been surrounded with, like they put a really old version of Adam Thielen as his like most reliable receiver for like most of the year, right? So
Great fantasy play for three quarters
I'm
too.
not convinced that CJ Stroud would have to this level with the Panthers, but I don't know. At the same time, you're right. CJ Stroud, if you're like redrafting even like a couple of months later, you're probably taking CJ Stroud.
And you know it was the end for Frank Reich, and Josh McCown was his either QB coach or OC, whatever it was. But when you let it leak out like partway through the season, it's like, we really wanted CJ Stroud, but the owner made a mistake. It's like, oh boy, that's not that. And that's why that pick, as soon as that pick was made, I'm like, there is on no interdimension, no world, no level of the universe that Frank Reich was taking a 5'8" quarterback. I'm sorry. Like, no. Frank Reich played in the league. He's taking CJ Stroud all day. And now they're going to draft again. Well, actually, I guess they can't because the Bears have their pick.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think.
Oh, go on, Joe.
Exactly. Yeah. The Bears have the number 1 overall pick. So Bears get to choose between Caleb Williams and whoever it is. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what these franchises do. Ryan Poles, the guy who runs he runs the Bears, and this is the guy who convinced the Chiefs to trade up for Patrick Mahomes. So he probably knows what he's doing.
Boy, and Justin Fields is a wild card. Does he go to an NFC South team? We talked about them. Like, does he stay? Did the Bears say, well, that's another opening potentially? Do you keep Fields and build around him? I think he's shown enough that you could build around him, or do you want to start fresh? That's so many fascinating little nuggets that can still be in play after this week here. We want to get in your fantasy football moments of shame. You can send them here in the text if you're watching on Twitter at SickPodBrowns, at AndyMC81. Get them in, reply to the tweet there. And also, who do you want the Browns to play, Jags or the Texans? Who do you want them to play in the first round of the playoffs? Most votes in are saying that they want the Jaguars, as do I. Rick is in there. Andy, Browns question. What's the update with Chubb? Is he going to be ready for early 24? Great question, Rick. So the Chubb had to have 2 surgeries. So he got hurt week 2, had the first surgery, had to go back in, have the second surgery. The reports are, all the Browns have said is he will be able to play in the 2024 season. We just don't know when. And Chubb's, like, these athletes are freaks, but Chubb's especially, like, my God, like, he was walking. So my kind of the vibe I'm getting is there's a chance for the start of the season, but if we're looking at it from a fantasy side, I'm not saying don't draft Nick Chubb, but just maybe be prepared that you might not be getting the full Nick Chubb experience until maybe like week 3 or 4. If you ease him back in.
Would you keep him, Andy, like as a keeper?
Interesting. I think I would, just because, like, Sho, again, we've seen with the running back spot, like, how weird it is, right? And how if you don't have someone to lean on, what that means. So I would say yes, but again, if you do, you got to make sure you're backfilling for the first quarter of the season. Like, you gotta be planning that out. Maybe it's you get a Jerome Ford, you get that sort of handcuff to go there, because Jerome Ford's done pretty well, especially catching the ball for the Browns.
It's true. You know what? He was more involved in the pass catching aspect of the Browns offense than I thought he would be. But Nick Chubb, I have that decision to make in a team where we keep like 5 keepers, and you have to keep them at like an auction value. So like Chubb's value was like $30. So I feel like that's yes, I think, but I don't know. It's a tough question.
It's tough. And Rick in the YouTube chat here saying someone dropped him in my keeper. I scooped him up, but he'll be one of my 2 keepers. So he's keeping Chubb and AJ Brown. That's nice. Yeah. That's nice. I can deal with, like, AJ Brown's a target hawk. And Joe, what the hell's happened to the Eagles? Good Lord. Like, wait, I've been trying to wrap my head around it. I'm watching. I'm like, this just seems like a mental thing to me with the Eagles. Like, they're not bad. Their defense is bad. Everyone has injuries. Injuries is not an excuse to me this year. The Browns have 13 players on IR. You get no sympathy from me. Like, it just seems like I don't know, did they peak too soon? Is it like, okay, we've gotten far in the playoffs, so we're bored and we're just not engaged? Like, I'll tell you this, you better beat this Giants team for not just the fact that you can take the division potentially, which you're probably, like, Dallas is probably going to kill the Commanders, so probably not. But you have to go in to the playoffs, I think, with some confidence. Like, that team has no confidence right now. None. I can't.
Yeah, watching them not be able to get off the field against the Cardinals last week. I mean, I praised the Cards for that, but boy, the Eagles' defense was awful. Hey, look, this is what you get when Matt Patricia is calling plays on defense. We've seen this over and over and over again for a number of different teams, but even on offense, like, I mean, you mentioned AJ Brown. AJ Brown, much like Stephon Diggs, has not had a very good second half or like back third of the season or whatever you want to call it, especially from a fantasy perspective, mainly because you draft these guys to be alpha dogs, number one wide receivers, averaging 15 to 20 points at a minimum per game. And neither of those guys were really giving you a lot of the really coveted outputs that you really wanted from a fantasy perspective. So from the Eagles perspective, they got to get the passing game in gear a little bit, because if they didn't have the tush push, it feels as though the offense for the Eagles would be far less productive than we give them credit for.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Wow. It just goes to show again, you can't predict. Beginning of the year, you can't predict anything in this league. It's wonderful.
They looked unstoppable at the beginning of the year.
Yes. Yes, and now here they are. So I'm very interested to see how they look against the Giants today. I think you really got to get that win if you're Philly to go strong. Otherwise, we could be seeing a one and done, which would be shocking. And that really opens everything up in the NFC. All right, let's get to our fantasy football moments of shame. And when we give our moments of shame, you will hear the bell of shame, Sho. Let's hear it.
Shame. Shame. Shame.
I don't know why I love that so much every year. From Game of Thrones, the shame, ringing the bell. Okay, kids, let's get the bell. Let's ring the bell. Get ready and admit it. This is a safe space. Okay, fantasy season's over. Sho, let's start with you. What is your fantasy football moment of shame?
Gosh, I think my fantasy moment of shame, Andy, I mentioned Travis Kelce earlier. In our league, actually, and I managed to overcome this, so I feel like I feel like okay about talking about it now, but had I lost, it would have really bothered me. But Travis Kelce, I drafted him literally for the first time ever in the first round, and boy, he was terrible. Like, it was just, especially in the fantasy playoffs. I mean, I think there were 2 straight weeks in which he had like 5 points or like 6 points or whatever it was. So he was not worthy of a first round pick this year, as he has been so many years in the past. So that's my fantasy moment of shame.
Okay, I got one from Grant here. Grant from Canton, our buddy. Ring the bell. Moment of shame.
Shame. Shame. Shame.
Okay, so Grant says, all right, taking Waddle round 3 and Ridley round 4 in the same draft after taking Saquon and Chubb in rounds 1 and 2. Grant, I feel for it.
That's a bad one.
Like, on the surface, like, you look at that beginning of the year, it's like, oh man, I'm winning this league, right? You have 2 stud running backs, 2 stud wide receivers on paper. And then it didn't quite. Ridley was a disappointment to me. I expected more out of Ridley. I picked up Christian Kirk.
He was great in week 1.
He was. Yes. And then it was Christian Kirk.
Yeah.
You know, Christian, and I had Christian Kirk in three leagues. That was one of the league winners. Thunderwolf on the check going, ouch, Grant, LOL. Yeah. That's just some bad luck. That's some bad luck.
That's the thing. Like, that's not really bad drafting, because I feel like you like followed a process. It's just that's just awful luck. I mean, there was one league, Andy, in my Superflex league. This is the league I missed the playoffs in. My first 5 picks won something like Joe Burrow for Superflex, did not finish the season. I think my keeper was Garrett Wilson, because I thought he was going to be like really great, and Aaron Rodgers put an end to that. Anthony Richardson, Nick Chubb. I think there was someone else who did not finish the season as the 5th pick, but boy, it was like every guy I drafted until like Breece Hall in like the 7th round did not finish the season. And it's like, I don't know, you can't really, that's after a certain point, you can't predict that. That's just stupid luck, essentially.
It is. Okay, I got mine here. Ring the bell. Moment of shame.
Shame.
All right.
Shame.
So this is
Shame.
This is a case show of what's the DJ Khaled of like you played yourself or whatever, right? Like,
okay, yeah.
So in one of the keeper leagues I'm in, it's an auction draft, right? And so sometimes the strategy is you put somebody up you don't want, but you think will go for a lot of money.
Sure.
So I put up Lamar Jackson. And, it's one of those cases, Show, where there's just some players and teams like, I just can't do it. Lamar Jackson had a very good fantasy year. I couldn't do it. So I put him up. I'm like, now the league knew this. And they made me play myself because it was like $10. Someone bet one. I was like, I'll go 11, try to drive it up a little bit. And it got up a little bit. And I went one too far. And I got stuck with Lamar Jackson. And I had Dak Prescott as a keeper. So it was a waste of money. I didn't want to play Lamar. So my moment of shame was taking him. But then being so stubborn, I didn't play him. I tried trading him all year, nothing. I kept him on the bench, Show. And that was the league I got eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. So I played myself. Moment of shame, trying to be too cute. I'll learn from that.
That's too funny. I've done that before. I've nominated people in auction league drafts, and you know what I like to do? I like to not nominate them at the $1 because I hate how long auction drafts take.
Oh yeah.
I will nominate them for a price I think they will go for. And sometimes you win with that, and you get guys where other guys don't want to bid on them. I got Nick Chubb at a pretty good price a couple of years ago because people just didn't want to bid on him after starting at X amount of dollars instead of at $1. But it's also bitten me in the past where I've had to keep guys at $2, $3, $4, $5 more than I probably would have. So that's also the fun and the danger of auction drafts.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially at the beginning, I like going a bit higher, putting out, because people get antsy. They want to pick.
Yeah.
They want to get a pick.
I found my strategy for auction drafts that's worked pretty well is, everyone always sits on money to use at the end of drafts. And that's definitely a good strategy, to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
But I have found that statistically, and I think Yahoo had written a piece on this, and I think Sleeper did as well. But I think essentially what you want to do in auction drafts is spend more money early because more people have the mindset of keeping money for later in drafts. So in theory, if you are willing to go a couple dollars per player over, you're more likely to get the better players early in the draft because other people are they're too hesitant because they're what could come later? What could be later in the draft?
Value.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Let's get to let's do one more moment of shame here. Ring the bell. Do it for Rick before he heads out.
Shame. Shame. Shame.
All right. So this is our buddy Rick in the YouTube draft said his moment of shame: showed up late to my draft, picked Mahomes in round 2, did not see that my team auto drafted Jalen Hurts in round 1.
That's terrific.
Oh.
That's so good.
That hurts, and especially the year Mahomes has had. You talk about awful expectations, super average. That's not the Patrick Mahomes fantasy wise. From where he was drafted, he's got to be one of the biggest disappointments.
Especially over Jalen Hurts, I would agree. Jalen Hurts had a bazillion rushing touchdowns, and there were games where Patrick Mahomes had not minus, but under 10 points. So yeah, that's a tough one.
It was. Now Jalen Hurts. I want to check this real quick because despite the Eagles' troubles, and that's where real life and fantasy differs, you can still do well fantasy wise. Yeah, Jalen Hurts has been outside of an absolute dog in Week 14 where he had 8 fantasy points. He has been an absolute stud. 3rd overall in fantasy football. So Eagles struggles or not, that guy is a fantasy gem compared to Patrick Mahomes, who really came down to earth. And I wonder, Show, watching the Chiefs in the playoffs is going to be very, very interesting this year to see what they're able to do. They play the Chargers this week. I don't know. Chargers are 3.5 favorites. I wouldn't be surprised if Mahomes is sitting. Who are they? I think I got Gabbard in there.
Yeah, they're pretty much all sitting. I think we heard that Kelsey, Mahomes, Rice, Pacheco, a bunch of the offensive linemen, a bunch of the defensive players, they're pretty much all sitting.
Just sitting. Okay. Is there any game that jumps out to you value-wise? I'm taking – this is what I'm doing. In the Browns-Bengals game, Bengals are 7.5-point favorites. I'm taking Browns to cover. I'm taking the under, and I'm taking Browns money line. That's my 3 same-game parlay.
Let's see here. You know what? I do like the Bears-Packers game. The Packers are only favored by 3. And I feel I don't think anyone's going to make any decisions in Chicago based on one game, but I do think there is an incentive for Justin Fields to ball out. So I wouldn't mind seeing the Bears win straight up money line. But I mean, like you said earlier, the Packers actually have to actually win that game if they want to, in theory, still contend for the playoffs. I gotta say, I think Cowboys Commanders at 425. I know that game is going to happen at the same time as Eagles Giants, but I think the spread is 13.5. I don't know. I feel like I've always been a little wary of double-digit spreads like you and I talk about. Having said that, the last time the Cowboys played the Commanders was on American Thanksgiving when the Cowboys just like pasted the Commanders by 30-plus points. So maybe that makes a difference, and the Cowboys do have to win the division. But, I mean, I'm not sure it'll be by like 13 points. So I might take the Commanders to cover, but don't hold me to that one.
Well, and remember, folks, you can make all of these bets. DraftKings Sportsbook, official sports betting partner of the NFL playoffs, and bringing you an offer that can help make the playoffs electrifying. Bet $5 on any game and get 200 instant bonus bets. 200. It says 150 there. That was the regular season, kids. 200 now for the playoffs. Just use bonus code SICKSPORTS. So sign up DraftKings Sportsbook, SICKSPORTS, and you get that $5 and 200 instantly for the playoffs. So how good is that? Sportsbook with the code SICKSPORTS. The crown is yours. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. So there you go. That's pretty sweet. Okay, Sho. And so we'll hope for a Belichick stomping of the Jets, just for fun one more time, right? And then see how Black Monday goes and see how all this plays out. This is going to be a very interesting finish to the week when it comes to who makes the playoffs still, division winners, and matchups. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I think the thing I'm looking forward to the most about the playoffs this year, Andy, is all the storylines. Like there is a real chance in the AFC and NFC we see games like Matthew Stafford and the Rams go back to Detroit to play the Lions. Yeah. We could see at some point, if it works out, we could see Joe Flacco and the Browns go back to Baltimore to play the Ravens. That'd be a lot of fun. We could see Tyreek Hill and the Dolphins go back to Arrowhead to play the Chiefs. Like we could see all of these different storylines in the NFL. So I mean, today I'm excited to see how the season ends, but I can't wait for the playoffs.
Yeah. Oh boy, that's going to be fascinating. Can't wait. All right, buddy. Hey, wait, where can people find you, hear you, all that good stuff?
Yeah, SNS Ali with 2 L's on X is where you can find all my good stuff. I host a lot of evening shows on Sportsnet 590 The Fan, and that's what I'll be doing until the Blue Jays kick off the season, I guess, in late March.
That's right, and I guess, spring ball will be here before we know it.
Yeah, and I think pitchers and catchers report in like 6 weeks, which is pretty crazy.
So let me ask you, I got a gorgeous Nate Pearson card, autographed, 3-color sock patch, limit 1 of 50, and then I got Alek Manoah on card rookie auto.
Rough.
Are either of those going to be paying off for me in 2024?
You know what? I think Alek Manoah, yes. I think Nate Pearson might be going the way of your Baker Mayfield cards.
Oh, is he done? Is it just too far now?
Yeah, he might. He's probably going to be on the team to start the year, but I wouldn't be surprised if his best years come in another team's uniform.
Oh, this is such a beautiful card. I'm going to show
really
this
nice looking.
It's the sock 3-color. It's a gorgeous card, but just didn't pay off well.
No,
just didn't work. Oh well. Okay. Well, good stuff, buddy. We'll listen to you there, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Sho.
See you, Andy.
See you, buddy. There he goes. Sho Ali on Twitter at SNS Ali with 2 L's. All right, guys. We got Browns Bengals. Let's hope no one gets hurt. That Jeff Driscoll plays well, and we get the W. Would be the first 12-win season for the Browns since 1986. First time they would go 4-2 in the division ever, and would put the Bengals winless in the division for the first time since 2002. So let's hope for that, and I want the Jaguars to win. There was one more tweet that came in from at Reigning Thought Z on Twitter, X at SickPodBrowns at AndyMC81. He said he wants the Texans, not the Jags. He wants the Texans for the Browns. Shouldn't it be better to face off against a team with first-year head coach and rookie QB? In theory, yes, but CJ Stroud, I would rather take banged up Trevor Lawrence, personally. But good point. Maybe you get rattled. You've never been in playoff stuff, perhaps. But CJ Stroud looked really good. Okay. That'll do it. Thanks to all you for watching. Doing it. We will be whatever for next week. Whatever day the Browns plan. If they play Saturday, we'll do a live Saturday show. If they play Sunday, we'll do a live Sunday show to get you ready for the Browns. So it's going to be all Browns and NFL going forward. I cannot wait. Thanks to Sho. Thanks to the Sick Media team. I'm Andy McNamara. You've been watching the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara. And as always, go Browns!
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.